Well, I'm very excited to be here today to talk to you about the revised Better Practice Guide for Waste Management in Multi-Unit Dwellings. Many of you people in this room will probably know of this document, others may not, so hopefully you will hear about it for the first time and spread the word around this particular resource. So I'm going to be talking about a little bit about the background to the Better Practice Guide, or what it is, so that people here can get a better understanding and start to use the document. I'll talk about the structure of the document, the fact that this document is a revised document from a previous version, and I'll also talk about give you some look at some of the key updates that have been made in this revised version. So you'll see there the Better Practice Guide. So what is it? This Better Practice Guide is a document that, as I said, was first published in 2002. It was reviewed in 2008, and now we have reviewed it again and provided an update. The document itself, as I said, is commonly referred to as the MUD Guide. We've actually changed the title to reflect some of the changes that have occurred through the document, and that's now called the Better Practice Guide for Resource Recovery in Residential Developments. And you'll see how that will reflect some of the updates as we go through. So this document is a resource that is available for use by targeting planners, council planners, developers, architects, council waste officers, anyone who's involved in developing and building residential buildings. It's a practical document which provides guidance to people around how to build effective waste and resource recovery facilities such as bin rooms, or how to make sure that waste is collected properly from residential buildings. And it provides practical examples to guide people around how to design for these facilities in residential developments. It covers off issues such as operational issues, how to get trucks moving around a building or into a basement, ongoing management, if you've got chute systems and what needs to be considered around the ongoing management of those. Technology options, so what options and technology is available to recover materials from residential buildings. Education issues, and also, very importantly, work health and safety, which needs to be considered up front when we're planning for resource recovery. So some of the key messages and principles that are embedded through the document and are reflected all throughout this guidance document is that we really need to be planning for waste collection systems up front, and we need to be designing that up front. And so if it's not designed and planned up front, we run the risk of buildings having ongoing waste collection issues for the life of that building. So it needs to be planned right. And there are many councils in this room who I'm sure can attest to that issue, that buildings, when it's not designed well, getting a truck into a basement, or residents continually dumping outside their property, it's an ongoing problem for the life of that building, and it costs council time and money. So we need to think about this up front so that we can avoid these problems, and this document is a guidance to try and achieve that. Some of the guiding principles that are set out in the front of the document is it's all about making collections convenient and safe. Safety is very important in the sector, so there's an emphasis on that, and it's going to be safe for residents to use and also the collection personnel to use. We want to be able to maximise performance of the resource recovery systems. We all know that we're striving towards meeting our resource recovery targets, and so we need to make sure that the systems are in place and make it easy for the community to recycle. We want to minimise the impacts of bin infrastructure on street amenity and building amenity. We need to be addressing hygiene issues and noise impacts from waste collections, and this can all be resolved through thinking it through up front. And we also want to ensure that resource recovery systems are cost effective to the householders and to councils. So I'm sure many of you are familiar, those who work in councils and have seen examples of the problems that occur on a daily basis. There's a snapshot here of illegal dumping outside buildings, inadequately sized bin rooms, bins on streets causing amenity issues. These are the sorts of problems that we all like to see go away, and we're always looking for solutions. And really, it's really about just thinking through these issues up front in the design process. So I mentioned that this is an existing document, this guidance document, so I'm sure how many of you are already familiar with this Better Practice Guide that's been around for quite some time. Yeah, great. So that's really good. And so I'm sure you're interested in the fact that it's been updated, and now that it's been updated, go to talk to your colleagues and spread the word about that. Just so that you'll be familiar with the document, it is still very much the same structure as it was before, but there's been, so we've got up front, we've got some information, some general information, and that you should read in the front part of the document. But the most important part here is that we've got chapters of different sections of different building types, and that's where, if you're looking at a specific type of building, you just go straight to that section. So we've got some new sections in there, for example, low-rise and medium-density housing. There's a new section on residential flat buildings, and that includes the low, medium and the high-rise. We've got the mixed-use development section. We've got another new section on new subdivisions and planned precincts, which I'll go into more detail about. And then we've got the appendices, which have all the technical information and some more detail in there. So it's very similar structure as before, but we've given it some more new areas in there. So just to quickly go through the need for the update. As many of you would be familiar, New South Wales population is growing, and with that growth, we're seeing a change in the building form, and we're seeing more medium density and high density residential developments. Less and less of the single unit dwellings that we're familiar with. And with this, I guess it comes new challenges for councils for how they service these buildings. So we needed to update that element in the document. And you also some councils will be very familiar with the fact that we're seeing more large land releases and new communities being developed and new precinct developments. We're having more town centres being redeveloped. And so these sorts of big developments that are going on at a state level need to also be thinking about how waste is addressed up front. So councils have been coming to me and talking to me a lot about some of the concerns that they have, and how we need to update this document so that they can start using the latest information in things like their development control plans, as some councils have been through council amalgamations and they had to amalgamate their DCPs. So there's the information was of use to them for that purpose. And also many councils are experiencing large numbers of residential developments. So the development application process, it's really important they have good up-to-date information to help them assess development applications, and this guidance document can certainly help them with that. As many of you will also be aware, there's many planning reforms going on across New South Wales, and some of the planning reforms that are going on is we're seeing more and more waste and resource recovery being addressed in strategic planning, which is great. And we're trying to make sure that those strategic planning documents are pointing to the Better Practice Guide, and of course we want to make sure that they're pointing to the latest version. So the district plans, some of you will be familiar in Sydney, for example, do point to the Better Practice Guide, so it's important to update it for that reason. And of course we had to undertake an update because there's been changes in collection technologies and terminology around planning issues, and there's been emphasis on collecting different types of material streams. So all of these updates, all of these issues led to the need for an update from the 2008 version. So let me just give you a snapshot of some of the things that are in the recently revised document. I talked about the low-rise medium density housing and how we're seeing more and more of that type of housing. And one of some of the key challenges with this particular housing stock is the limited side setbacks and the shorter lot widths. And this is causing problems for councils in terms of working out where do residents put their bins for storage, and then where does the collection occur. We don't want people carting their bins through the house if the collection point is at the rear of the house and the storage was designed at the front, or vice versa. And we also don't want to create street amenity issues. So this is an example of a row house. Row houses commonly form low density housing. So you can see what the developer had in mind of that beautiful picture. We obviously can see there hasn't been any sort of storage bins presented in that photo. But at the end of the day, when designers are thinking about designing these sorts of residential developments, they need to think about where is the bin going to be serviced from, and the streetscape. So the low-rise medium density housing, there's a whole new section on that, as I said, and this is an example of one of the new figures in the document. And this figure shows an example of a manor house, which is another type of new medium density housing that has come up recently. This is where you have up to 4 or 5 individual units on one lot, and and each of those units are technically are able to have a set of bins, because they're paying a domestic waste charge for that. So when developers are building these housing types, they need to think about where a resident's going to put their 2 or 3 bins that they're entitled to. So this is an example where you could have a communal bin rooms or a storage area for a manor house. So this is just giving you a taste of what was inside the resource, inside the guide. So just in terms of, I'll move on to one of the sections. I've just been picking out some of the sections that are particularly of interest. Residential flat buildings, commonly known in the waste industry as multi-unit dwellings, but it's actually referred to as a residential flat building in planning terms. And one of the key things that the document tries to reinforce is that we really need to have waste management plans written, and most councils do require a waste management plan written as part of the development application process. And these waste management plans really should be written by experts in the field in terms of waste management or waste auditing, people who can look at the entire development and understand the operational issues involved with collection of waste, understand how much waste that property will generate, so that we can come up with some good solutions for the council to assess and developers to build into the design. So the waste management plan is a really good opportunity to do that, and development councils really should be looking closely at those waste management plans. Other key things in the document at this point is, look, in terms of medium and high-rise residential flat buildings, on-site collection is still considered better practice. I know some councils can't always offer on-site collections. Throughout the document, there are options, a number of options. There's never always one is the best option, but on-site collections, so getting trucks into basements or some sort of lay-by collection on a lay-by within the building envelope is considered better practice. It helps to improve street amenity, and it's more efficient. Chute systems are still sort of the preferred for collecting, particularly from the high-rise. But of course, we all know there are issues with chute systems, but at the moment, it's still an efficient way of getting waste at least collected from the units. In terms of bulky waste, there's an emphasis in the document that we try and encourage bulky waste storage rooms to be built in residential flat buildings, and I've given them some guidance there around what they should look like and how big they should be. For just simple things like not using a standard door width, having a door width that's 1.5 metres wide, so that you can get mattress in or a piece of a larger item in, having a caged front so that the people can look into the room and not have fear of something falling on them. They can see what obstacles are inside that room, because I'm sure they can get quite overwhelming with a whole range of waste in there. But the purpose of the bulky storage room is to provide residents with somewhere to put their waste that's awaiting collection, instead of out the front and attracting illegal dumps and attracting waste. So this is an initiative that's within the resource. And this is where it gets a little bit more interesting, and try to provide a vision for the future, and trying to emphasise that opportunities in residential flat buildings to collect not just your traditional three waste streams, your garbage and your recycling. It's mostly garbage and recycling, but we certainly want to see more organics collected as well. But also the opportunity with other problem wastes. It would have been remiss of me not to have gone that extra step and put in these sorts of collections, where we're seeing more and more of problem waste, the opportunity to be collected from a basement in a residential flat building. So you can have things like a clothing bin, or printer cartridges collected, fluorescent light bulbs, mobile phones, etc. And in these two examples here, the top photo some of you would be familiar with is Canterbury Bankstown, who trialled that with a range of different buildings where they put in bulk waste collection services. And the bottom right one there is Sydney City Council, where the developer actually purchased a car parking space in order to put in a recycling facility or recycling area for the residents. So it can be done, and I'm sure there are developers and architects out there who are looking to develop very green buildings. This is the way we see the future for that. One of the other new sections that I mentioned earlier was about the subdivisions and the planned precincts. So we're seeing more and more of these sorts of developments. And some of the challenges there that councils have expressed to me have been things like private roads not being designed to take the weight of a heavy ridge vehicle, off-street parking creating obstacles on collection day for the council truck to come by and collect waste, which is the example on the top right corner there, or turning circles not wide enough for the council truck to get around. And this is all about planning up front before the houses are even going in. It's all about the street width planning, it's all about the streetscape and that sort of planning. So that's why in this particular document we've gone down the path of even right down before houses are built is something that needs to be considered. And so better practice, what does it look like? This is an example here from Camden Council. Hopefully there's someone in the room from Camden Council, where you've, in the top left-hand corner there, you've got an example of a laneway collection where the road has been designed wide enough for a collection truck to get down. They've considered where the bins will be collected from, so they've provided bin pads, a designated collection point. And the bins are not being left in front of people's garages or on the street. There's a lay-by there. And so it's a very good example of better practice for laneway collections. And again, you can see the bottom stencil there, another way is using a stencil to earmark that. One other thing I wanted to mention is that bin carting routes. We don't want residents carting bins from their home to the collection point. I've put in the restriction there of, 30 metres is a reasonable distance, is the furthest distance people should be asked to send a bin. I've had councillors speak to me about residents having to cart bins up to 220 metres because that's where the collection point was for their home. I just don't think that's acceptable. In terms of planned precincts, and this is a really exciting part of the document, and I feel it's an opportunity where we've taken this whole idea of the circular economy that we've been talking a lot about today, and in designing these town centres, which is we're seeing more of, it is an opportunity to incorporate circular economy thinking. And so why can't we have reuse hubs and recycle repair facilities built into residential developments? Why can't we have some of the land allocated for the future reverse vending machines that we're going to be needing for our earn and return programs or community recycling centres? So this is really the opportunity when these precincts are being developed that these sorts of initiatives are put in. And that bottom right-hand corner there is actually a photo in Copenhagen where they introduced a repair facility within a residential building. So just giving you some inspiration there. And again, another opportunity with planned precincts is vacuum systems, which is mentioned in the document. So those who are interested in learning more about vacuum systems, there is some technical information there about that. Really, opportunity, it's already got this economy of scale, so at least 1,000 units or more, and that's something that we need to be thinking about for future collections on a precinct scale level. And this is where waste can be collected from the building through tubes, but the actual collection point can be up to 1 kilometre away from that community, helping to improve amenity and other outcomes. I don't have time to go into that, but I think it's an interesting technology that we should be considering. So I wanted to leave time for questions, but I do want to say that I hope that you all, in the next day or so, the revised document will be available on the EPA website. For those of you who are familiar with the document, I'd really encourage you all to get a copy of it and make sure that some of the planners you're working with or architects or developers you're working with, email it to them or spread the word, send them the link. It's really important that this document is widely used throughout the sector, and if you're having any difficulty getting hold of the document, please email me and we'll sort it out, but hopefully you'll enjoy the new version. Thank you.